Hey, I'm just gonna fix my mic to make sure I'm on the mic. I just realized it. I'm not plugged in. Give me 1 second. Um, oh, all right. Hi, thank you all so much for joining the podcast. If you're watching me on the replay, thank you. If you're listening to me, thank you for listening. What I do on my podcast is I get to talk to amazing people that do things to empower other people by sharing their story. But once a month, I get to talk about relationships, and I get to do it with no other than Mr. Jeff Rogers, who I'm going to have introduce himself to you all.
What's up, folks? I'm Jeff Rogers, and apparently I'm an amazing person. Celeste,
Did I use that word amazing? Oh, can you hear
did.
me? Am I okay?
You do sound good, and yes, you did use amazing, but you apparently didn't mean it because you already forgot that you said it. Celeste, your skin looks quite radiant today, and so I would
You know
like.
what? My husband told me earlier, and I was like, is he trying to play me for later tonight?
No,
Like, is he just saying that? I appreciate that.
no, you see that? So I diluted his comment because now two people said it, so it's not as special. Now you know. Now you know it's true, but no. So for the people that are just listening, you're missing out. Celeste looks like Cam A.
Oh,
Very good.
wow. I was like, for real? I don't know why I second guessed him. It was random. And this is random too. So thank you.
No problem.
Tell people who you are and what you do.
Who am I? What I do? I'm an executive coach, trainer, facilitator. Uh, I basically help people solve. Uh, if I had to sum it up, how do I get out of my own way? That's probably the most really down to the bottom, whether it's as a leader, whether it's as a CEO or an employee or just a person that's trying to figure out, I want to achieve this thing or these things. Why is it not happening? And we help them get out their own way.
Nice. Since you talk about getting out of your own way, because one of the things I try to tell people a lot of times is you versus you, right? It's not something that's framed in that way in our society. There's this blaming thing if it wasn't for you or this or that. How much does that stand in the way of people's progress? The idea of not realizing like the power they have, or the way that they can actually make choices. What do you think? How much percentage of that in your line of work do you see happen?
I mean, it's approaching 100%, depending on how you look at it. So certainly, there are external challenges and stuff like that, but many of them are unchangeable. So most of the things that you can change are the way that you think, the way that you behave, the way that you see things. That's where all the change is available, right? And if you're trying to sync up with others or get the most out of others or get the most out of yourself, it's you that you can change. Sitting around and
Yeah.
saying how others are holding you back because you say, well, they're all wearing red and we were all supposed, I wanted to match and they're all wearing red and we were supposed to wear blue. And I say, so you really want to match? Go, yeah. So then you should put on red. They go, but we said blue. I hear you, but you could achieve your goal if you put on red. You
Yeah.
could. Or you
Yeah.
can be mad that you don't all match. What do you choose?
Yeah, yeah. And that's really hard. But it's interesting how when I pose it in a framework where it's about their options, they're like, I never thought about it that way. And it's not because we're dumb, right? We have the intellectual ability to do it. We've just never done it for ourselves. We do it for other people really quick.
Oftentimes you have these implicit meta parameters. And so I'll give you an example. This is an obvious one. I think you should have this one. If you said, Jeff, I'm cold. And I said, you're really cold? I could kill that for you easy. You go, yeah. And then I cover you in gasoline and light you on fire. You'll be warm for the rest of your life, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
For all the next 30 seconds. So, but a meta parameter is like, yeah, I want to keep living. I want to be warm, not just I don't want to be cold anymore. So a lot of times people say stuff like, let's just say I want to be successful. I want to be successful. And
Yeah.
I go, okay. But then as you dig in, they mean something more like, I want to appear to be successful as well. People need to know this about me, right? Or they say, I want to be successful, but what they actually mean is in this specific thing for my rap career, right? Something where it's like, well, do you have options, but they're not stating the parameters, but there are other parameters which are guiding the decisions that they make, right? I want to be happy. Why can't I find a man? That, for all I know, that's a question today. How come I can't
Right.
find a man? And you say, well, actually, let's look in your DMs. Oh my God, you have 3 people DM'd you. They go, yeah, but when I say a man, basically, why doesn't Devontae love me? Which is actually different, right?
Yeah, yeah, it is. So, I forgot my husband's watching. Oh my god.
I'll read
He
this one.
doesn't usually watch, and I completely forgot he was watching upstairs, and
Wow. I
but
have a real I have a real relationship question. Why is it that wives never believe their husbands, but instead wait for someone else to validate their words of the person that they chose to marry? You know what?
so
Very true.
mad.
Very true.
It's true, he's right.
Your
But
compliment. He said, babe, your skin looks amazing today. You said, shut up and make me dinner. And then I said it, and you were like, oh, thank you, Jeff. Very nice.
wait, so even though this just happened, this really is true, like, it sucks, but sometimes can you explain why this is the case?
Well, this is kind of has like a little almost a meta thing. You go like, of course you think I'm radiant. You're supposed to think that. Who cares? But then a stranger says that I'm not a stranger, but an external person. You go, oh my gosh, wow, thank you. So in other words, it's because you were taking Jonathan for granted.
That's
You
what it
take his
was.
affection and his admiration for granted.
Alright, that's enough, he's gonna use it later.
Oh, he's gonna use it, and I hope you do use it, sir, tonight. She says, I'm tired from a podcast. You say, oh no, you don't. No, you don't.
Alright, yes, I believe you, honey, I believe you. Alright, um, that's hilarious. So, let's start with this question. This one's a little bit more serious than the other
Sure.
2. Um, so I can't get it all on the screen, but it says, I'm struggling with some abuse that happened to me when I was a child. I was approximately 8 when it happened. I didn't feel anything then. I'm guessing I was numb. Now I'm 28 and I feel pain. Pain I never felt before from the abuse. This came out of left field. Can you explain what's happening? How could I overcome it? It's now affecting my work and personal life. I'm guessing my body, brain went numb. I'm guessing I'm asking, how do I heal my childhood traumas? If my parent,
Yep. And if my parent,
and if my parent, sorry, I'm trying to find it. Let me go to this. And if my parent got some type of counseling or help at the time, would it have helped me now that I'm an adult? I feel like it was just swept under the rug.
hmm. Okay, so this letter writer, they were abused when they were around 8. Okay. They don't feel as though it affected them at that time, nor do they feel that they were very preoccupied with it at that time.
Mm-hmm.
However, now they're older, it's decades later, 28 years old. So 20 years later, now they do feel pain to the point where it's affecting them at work and at home, basically in their life. So they want to know how I heal from childhood trauma. And then, as a kind of a side question, would things have been better if I'd gotten therapy at that time? If my parents had gotten me therapy at that time, would I be in this position right now?
Right.
Celeste, this is a real Celeste. This is like at the core of what you do. So why don't you go
Mhm.
first?
So even though it seems like you weren't affected during the time because you kept going, which a lot of us do, it doesn't mean that you were not affected just because you couldn't see it in real time, right? When we cut our hand and we bleed, we see it in real time. We bandage it up. If we need to go to the doctor, we'll go to the doctor for the physical. The emotional stuff is not something we have typically been taught how to deal with, especially if you grow up in a system where you're taught to don't say nothing and, keep it hush hush. Now that you're getting older, more responsibilities, the way you may have coped before may not have worked, doesn't work anymore, right? Maybe distraction, maybe work, maybe school. For me, it was school. When school was over, I realized, like, oh my gosh, I'm struggling. So it wasn't that I wasn't struggling all of the time. It's just that my coping mechanism was no longer available to me, and now everything was coming up. The thing about the parent, would it have been would it have helped? It more likely than not would have helped, right? And I just want to be mindful that it's not about blaming anybody for what they didn't do or do, right? Because parents, we do what we have with the information that's available to us. And mental health, honestly, this is like, and I've been on line and talking about mental health and in the field for 20 years. And this is the first time I'm seeing it more acceptable, where people are comfortable with saying, I went to therapy. Like, it wasn't like that years ago. So I just want you to be mindful of that part. And as far as like what's happening, because there's a question, the question is, can you explain what's happening and how could I overcome it? And what's happening is that you no longer you're no longer able to numb it the way you have before. And so now, everything's oozing out. And I know a lot of people have started to deal with this during the pandemic. And what can you do about it? One thing that's hard is sitting in pain and being uncomfortable and challenging yourself. Jeff and I started the podcast with talking about it's always going to be you versus you. And it sucks, right? I always talk about like fault and responsibility. What happened to you wasn't your fault. But unfortunately, if you allow that tape to keep replaying, that's going to be your narrative, right? That'll be the narrative of your life. And that's unfortunately for so many people, that if you're listening, a lot of times it's like, if you haven't processed what's happened, your brain only knows what the information that's been available to it, which is pain and trauma. So your lens on life, your lens on yourself tends to look that way. So it's really important to be mindful so that you can begin to see what's happening in front of you as it is, and not, sometimes it feels deeper than what it is when those emotions come up. But when you start to make the connections, you'll start to find yourself looking at life a little differently. But it does take time to kind of like work on that process. What are your thoughts?
I think everything you said is spot on. We don't know enough about everything that you've said, letter writer, to know exactly what's making this surface now. But I can give you something that happens a good amount of time, like a lot of times when this happens. So something traumatic happens, and people, they can sometimes suppress it, right? It's best that I don't think about it, not because it's healed, but because it's so painful, actually, that it's better for me to just avoid it. I don't look at it. I don't think about it, whatever it is. And then later in life, for whatever reason, as Celeste saying, that option no longer is available. One way where that can happen sometimes is a kind of transference, it's called, right? Where where a new relationship mirrors or mimics an old one. Oh, and that can even be like with the environment. So like maybe you've heard of Vietnam veterans having flashbacks, having war flashbacks, right? Or I say Vietnam veteran, but anyone who's been through traumatic stress might have, let's say they were in a war and they have a war flashback. So they're walking down the street and everything's fine. And then a car backfires. And in that moment, that sound brings them back to the moment where they were in a war zone and people were shooting. And they respond in that moment. They say, get down, and they duck down as if they were back in Bosnia or Vietnam or Iraq or whatever it is. So what sometimes might happen is that you've been suppressing some feeling, and then there's some preceding event that triggers you the way that a car backfiring does. So let's imagine that you have a boss that reminds you got a new job, and the boss kind of reminds you of the person who perpetrated your abuse. You don't even really put it together, but you just realize, man, they have the same accent, or they look alike, something like that. Or maybe this thing happened when you were 8. I'm just saying anything. You had a kid at 20. Now your kid is 8, And so when you see that 8-year old, suddenly
It's triggered.
it triggers you for
Mm.
all the time when you were 8 and how you were hurt.
Mhm.
I don't know that that's what's happening, but that is common, which is that if you just suppress pain instead of working through it, and your whole kind of unwitting plan is just to avoid it, something pops up in life and makes it hard to avoid.
Yeah.
And so while that is sad and scary, what I will say is ideally you would work through this because you do not have to be a prisoner of this. You don't. And Celeste's right. We basically do live in a relative golden age of therapy, meaning therapy is largely normalized. It's more accessible than it probably was 20 years ago for most people.
Mhm.
And the stigma is at an all-time low. I'm not saying there's no stigma, but
Right.
it's at an all-time low as people more and more understand that therapy is not fake or bad or
Right.
or a bunch of BS. So while I do wish you could have got the help that you deserved at that time, I will say that the best time to plant a tree for shade is 20 years ago, and the second best time is today. And
Mm.
so, although nobody got you in therapy 20 years ago, you can get yourself in therapy today so that next year you say, man, I'm glad I did that.
Mhm. I like
You can
that.
do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And there I was sharing this with somebody earlier, but there's this book called Healing the Inner Child Reconciliation that I love. And I was sharing this piece with someone today about embracing our pain and sorrow with energy of mindfulness. It's the practice of massaging our conscious. So it says when the blood doesn't circulate well, our organs can't function properly and we can get sick. And then it says, when our psyche doesn't circulate well, our mind will become sick. Mindfulness stimulates, accelerates circulation throughout blocks of pain. And so when you think about, and this is from a book by Thich Nhat Hanh, but when you think about your struggle with the pain that you're feeling, understand that like yes, it's hard to confront it, right? Nobody would ever say like I want to sit in pain. But pain actually the signals of our body gives us a sign, and so unfortunately most people choose to numb it, which I understand, like it's hard. But I know that when you face it, you actually begin to have more control over your life. It's hard to really like think about it that deeply in the moment when you're trying to face it because you've never done it before. But I do know facing it actually gives you more power. Does that make sense, Jeff?
Exactly true. It's exactly true. And it's one of those things where instead of the phrase that don't pray for a lighter load, pray for a stronger back. I agree with that, except for uh, rather than hoping that someone grants it for you, you get to build those muscles and skills and kind of untie those knots yourself. And so while unfortunately praying alone is probably not going to heal that pain for you,
Yeah.
but you have access to what it takes to go and untie these knots and do this work to where in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months,
Yeah.
24 months, you feel a progress where you say, you know what? I can't
Yeah.
undo what happened to me when I was young, but it doesn't define me. I'm a human being that
Yes.
lives a full life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. Really quick, I watched this Netflix Get Good with Money. I've been really into like financial literacy.
Sure.
But they follow different people for 12 months. So every 3 months we seen an update. It was an hour and a half show. But anyways, my favorite person was this lady. She was 65,000 in debt. At month one, she was feeling so hopeless, and she talked about she had a hard time facing the debt because it was shame. There's a lot of stuff there. By month 12, she was hopeful. She was down to $12,000, and I just felt so happy for her to see her go from one extreme to the other. But she had to start and look at it, right? Obviously, when it comes to finances, it's tangible. You can see the decrease happening in real time. So as you're thinking about like working on yourself, you got to be mindful to celebrate the moments, look at the wins. Even like with my clients and they get these aha moments that are hard to face, we still look at that as a win because they're facing it. So just kind of being mindful of celebrating those like moments of clarity. Even just this question it shows like your clarity and what's happening with you and how you've been able to make some connections.
Perfect.
So the next question says, I appreciate the advice that you have given thus far. I have no problem sleeping with him, but when we're married, it just kind of went into the question. I have no problem sleeping with him, but when we are married, I would like separate bedrooms. I love having my own space as well as sharing a space temporarily. Do you think that could be a deal breaker or change the dynamic of a relationship for the worst?
Hmm. So, of course, could it think of what the word could means? Is it possible that that's a deal breaker? It's imaginable that a man says, "My wife has to sleep in my bed, and I demand a twin bed because that's the way my parents."
A twin.
Right, a twin. We got to sleep on top of each other. Of course, he could say that. I think that if this is what you choose, I think a lot of people understand that there's some merits to this, and people do things like this, right? So one thing I don't know exactly a rationale, but you just say I'm a light sleeper, so when people toss and turn, it wakes me up, or I even hearing other people's breathing or whatever it is. You sleep with I sleep with 5 blankets. You like to sleep on top of the sheets, or I sleep with a fan on. You know what I mean? Our
Mhm.
idiosyncrasies. My sleep is important to me, and I want to sleep in my own bed or have my own separate bedroom. So I don't think. I mean, perhaps it's just that I'm very, very, very open to it, Celeste. Frida Kahlo, the famous Mexican artist. She's a woman. She's oftentimes depicted as having a unibrow, right? If you think of this woman, uh, uh, Salma Hayek played her in a movie. Her and her husband had separate houses, adjoining houses, right? Uh, because it was just like, yeah, just because I love you, don't mean we have to share a bedroom. People do whatever they want to do. So I'm all for it. When you say change the dynamic of relationship for the worse, um, only if uh, your mate doesn't like it. Where it's when I say it's a compromise, the kind of compromise that weighs on them, where they go like, "Oh, when are you gonna finally cave in and share a bedroom with me?" You know what I mean? But if both people, and it doesn't mean you can't chill. Like, hey, let's have a sleepover, or hey, let's movie night in my bedroom. Oh, next week movie night in my bedroom. You choose the movie, I choose the bedroom. You see what I'm saying? Like, you
Yeah.
could, as long as it's not. If one person's like, this embarrasses me, this means you don't love me,
Right.
uh, so forth, so on. I hate waking up and I don't know where you are.
Yeah.
I don't see this. This is one of the lighter problems we've ever. First of all, this hasn't actually happened yet, which is nice. But I see this, Celeste, as one of the most solvable things we've ever faced. No?
Yeah, but I'll say I agree with everything Jeff is saying. But in general, for because this isn't a typical question or a typical thing people struggle with. But I do think people struggle with the idea of presenting something to their partner and being concerned about it being a deal breaker. What's your thoughts about that in general? Around like trying to present something, or because I think sometimes people will hold in what they feel or what they may need because they're worried it may hurt the other person. I would love to hear your thoughts because I think that can like help somebody.
Um, so if you're gonna be in a long-term relationship, I'm gonna be honest. The first thing you should look to do is figure out what you can put up with. Meaning, if they do something or what you say, I love Celeste, but I just hate the way she smiles. I want her to smile differently. Step number one, learn to get over that. Because again, most
He
of the
hates my
change,
laugh.
well,
My
most
husband
of the
hates my laugh.
okay, well so okay, if Jonathan says, "Damn, that's not my favorite laugh," okay, that's cool and fine. But I laugh how I laugh. Laughing is basically involuntary. If you really can't put up with my laugh, I guess you got to get the hell out
Yeah,
because I'm gonna be laughing like this for the rest of the time because that's how I laugh. So most compromise is more like you learning to live with stuff, mostly. That being said, this is kind of like a functional thing where you didn't say why, but I'm just imagining you go, I'm an introvert. I'm very particular about the way I like my bedroom. I'm very particular about the way I sleep. I'm just guessing that it's one of those, right?
Yeah.
Where you kind of go like, look, my quality of life. Celeste laugh, which I think is terrific. Sorry, Jonathan, but which I think is terrific. But Celeste laugh is not a quality of life issue. But
Right.
sleeping, you spend a third of your life sleeping. If you have to sleep in a
Yeah.
bad way, right? Let's
Yeah.
say somebody loves to sleep with the TV and the lights on. Let's just say, right? They love it. That's how I grew up, and I love it. That's
Yeah.
not going to work for old Jeff, baby. Old Jeff
Right.
needs darkness to sleep. That's what Jeff likes. So we say, okay, we'll get separate bedrooms. Do you know what I mean? And you got to
Yeah.
work it out like that if you really can't live with it, if it's a quality of life issue. And when
Yeah.
you do, you got to be direct. And if something's a real deal breaker, there's some things that people cannot tolerate where
Right.
they go
Right.
like, hey, listen, let's say, for example, somebody said, I met you and I always said I didn't want kids because I don't like them. And I don't really like your little rugrat either, but I like you so much that I guess I'll be around, but he can't call me dad. All right, dog, this is not going to work. You know what I mean? Like
For real.
it sounds to me, it sounds to me like we got a real deal breaker here. Because for
Yeah.
me, a primary thing would be that we're a package deal. It's something you hear a
Yep.
lot. We're a package deal. Loving my kid is part. I don't mean you have to take over child support payments, but treating
Right.
my kid with the same quality that I
Yeah.
do is like part of being with me. You don't have to because we could not be together instead. That's how you get to not
Yeah.
do that. And
Yeah.
so with this could be it. This could be a deal breaker. But I imagine a lot of people could see some merit to this. We kind of know what it's like. Anyone who's ever had a
Yeah.
woman put her cold feet in your back, y'all women with your endlessly cold feet. Why are your feet so cold? Take some
Is
iron.
Jonathan in your DM or something?
How did I know that? Right? Freezing feet. But they put their cold paws on you. You say, "Oh, does this feel good to you?" Right? Because I'm warm, but it feels
I
bad to me because you're cold. You're hurting me with coldness. But women, every woman I ever slept with did that with their polar bear feet. But the point is that that I'm more right. There you go, Carla, putting them Cape Verdean cold feet on you. Damn, I thought Cape Verde was a warm climate. Why are your feet so cold? But they put their cold feet on you. But I tolerate that. But oh, you don't love my kid? I don't tolerate that. So basically,
right.
if it's something that you can't tolerate, you got to be direct. But if you're going to be with somebody long term, they're really going to have a bunch of things you don't love. And the first thing you should do is look to yourself to become a little more accepting of things like Celeste's laugh and Carla's feet.
I wanted to say, also I want to say that being mindful that every situation looks different, right? Um, the norm, I think sometimes we look at the norm as like, if my relationship doesn't look like this, do I even have a relationship? Like, and so like everybody's situation in their relationship and the dynamics and how it looks is fine for that. I think it's okay to be different. It's okay not to do things the same way in general, whether we're talking about separate bedrooms or anything, just kind of being mindful that everybody's relationship just going to look different.
Agree?
All right, last question. So so I'm reading the question. I went to a friend's birthday party and ran into a guy who had been trying to court me. I was thinking of giving him a chance, but the problem was that he was there with his girlfriend. Why do men I don't know why it's not coming up. Why do men do that? I think it's disrespectful to your partner.
Why do men do what? What's that in this case? Why do men
I knew he
go
was
to
gonna pick this apart.
right? Why do men go to parties? Why do men go there with their girlfriend? What's that? Do we
You know what that is?
is the
I mean,
question is the question is why was he trying to court me if he had a girlfriend? Is that the question?
that feels like what they're trying to say.
Okay. So first of all, it's possible that you don't know the timeline or the situation. People are on again, off again all the time. That is possible. So you really don't know people's deal. It's also possible that they are polyamorous or in an open relationship. You really don't know that. because you don't always know people's deal. So in that case, that would just be an absence of information on the letter writer's part. But that's not the only way this happens. There's another way this happens, which is a man has a girlfriend with whom he's promised to be monogamous, but he's courting you, letter writer. Why do men do that? For the same reason why you tell yourself you're going to eat healthy and then you eat ice cream.
I don't like why do men do that? I feel like it puts I
It's
don't like the
gendered.
yeah, I don't like it when we label a whole gender as if
Celeste, thank you for standing up for men's rights. This is what this podcast has been all about. No, it's clearly not. I answered her question as it was, but clearly you could ask why are people unfaithful? Why?
Okay. Yeah.
The reason is because a certain amount of a romantic and sexual jealousy appears to be a human universal. And by human universal, I mean that in every society, humans form pair bonds. Something like marriage, like what we think of as marriage, where you a Bible and a priest is needed. That's not a human universal. There are societies that don't do it just like that. But pair bonding is something that human society people do all over. In the Amazon and in New Guinea, people have pair bonds, even if they've never heard of Jesus Christ style of marriage. You see what I'm saying? They still
Yeah,
do it,
yeah.
and it gives you a certain amount of possession over the other person, right? We're in a special relationship, and oftentimes people like that, where they say, "I like having a certain amount of possession over you," but that doesn't mean I like being possessed. That's different. That's just a deal I made in order to get my half. Do you get what I'm saying? So it's
I
like
get it.
it's we'll take it's like when you play baseball. The funnest thing in baseball is to be up at bat and to swing the bat. But someone has to be in the outfield catching the ball too. But
Yeah.
that's not really the fun thing about baseball. But in order to have a game, someone has to do the unfun half.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? And kind of in the same way. So if we just imagine this guy, he likes you, he's attracted to you. He also likes and is attracted to his girlfriend at the same time. And so it's all well and good. He probably doesn't love the idea of her being with somebody else. Probably not. Some guys do like that. Some guys
Mhm.
tolerate it. Some guys even
Mhm.
like it. But most
Mhm. Mhm.
guys probably have some amount of romantic and sexual jealousy and don't like it. But
Yep.
they do like, uh, uh, touching another woman and being with her and doing things with her, and maybe having romantic dinners with her, maybe taking off her clothes. And for that reason, they try to have their cake and eat it too. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah. And I think like you said, everybody's relationship situation is different. And being mindful of not putting everybody in the box. One thing that's interesting is when women is some women will say like, "Oh, I'm into dogs," but they're pursuing a relationship, and it's kind of like when you have this like connotation about the person or gender that you're pursuing. When you pursue them, your mind's going to look for that evidence,
Mm.
and I don't think we realize how that happens, or if something happened like somebody cheated on you, all people are so like the all or nothing mentality. If you have that and you're still pursuing something healthy, it won't like add up, right? The math won't math.
Right. That's that. So that's called confirmation bias, right? The fact that once when you buy a new car and suddenly you look around, you see that car everywhere, right? What it is when you weren't thinking about that car, it was driving right past you. But
Yeah.
once that car is notable to you in some way, you see it everywhere.
Yes.
That's a form of
Yes.
confirmation bias. Or the one I usually use, you go, why does it always rain when I get my hair done? Well, when it rains and you don't get your hair done, you don't notice. When you get your hair done and it doesn't rain, you don't notice. When it gets your hair done and it
Yeah.
rains, you go, see, why do you always do that, God? That's
Yep.
confirmation bias. One other thing I'll point out that I forgot to mention. Here's a very
Yeah.
common one. I didn't think of this initially because they
Mhm.
gendered it. Here is a very gendered way that people kind of cheat and court while they're still in a relationship. But I'm going
Mhm.
to say this is one that women do a little bit more. This is one that women do a little bit more.
You're giving a gender statement, Jeff? That's
A
not like
little bit,
you.
a little. Well, it's
Right.
not a. People have tendencies on a population level. This is not the
Okay.
same
Okay.
as every individual always does this.
Okay.
But a more common woman one is kind of the equivalent of when you apply for another job while you're at work, right? Which is to say, sometimes women start relationship number two when they're still in relationship number one, right?
Yes.
I'm not saying men don't do that too, but
Cause y'all
that
know y'all
I'm not
nice.
saying men don't do that too, but sometimes women they basically go, I would leave this dude, the dude I'm with now, I would leave him today if this other dude would act right, right? And so they got one foot out the door, but they're not going to shut the door until the other person says, "Come on in here," and then they go, "Adios, sucker," and they leave.
We're great multitaskers.
I like that. That's a very positive framing of that, right? And so, which is just like not quitting a job until you got the new job. But both genders are capable of doing that. Both genders are capable of all types of cheating and everything. But you know what I'm talking about, right? That there's someone else in line, right? Carla says we start 4 other relationships. The the truth of the matter is, the truth of the matter is, on a population level, it seems that men are probably a little bit more interested in variety, which is to say that it's probably too big to speak of every man in this way. That's too big. Many men would say, one wife, why not 4? And I think that women are less likely to have that position, but they say, a husband that's a vice president, why not a husband that's a president? Meaning that it's a quality and a quantity thing. But none of this is true of everybody. For example, Celeste and Jonathan, of course, for them, they just every night they hold hands and twirl. Long as I live, my first love. That's what they do. I'm talking about other people.
No, he's screaming at me to get my feet off of him.
I'm cold. Each toe is like an ice cube.
And I'm
I don't know how
begging
y'all
him.
do that. I'm like, yo, it's July. It's July. How are your feet cold? It is. It's actually the summer solstice. How are you so cold?
I
Yeah, you gotta laugh when you put your feet on him
know.
and then laugh. That's when he's files for yeah. Jonathan saying 2 wives too much to manage. Yeah, you'll freeze to death with them feet. 4 feet, you'll just be yeah. But yeah. So these are the dynamic. It's actually if people know the mathematical field of game theory, right? Game theory is the way that people optimize in games for the optimum strategy, right? And so mating has a big game theory aspect to it, which is how do I maximize what I want and give up as little as I have to. So one way to do that, I want access to as many attractive mates as I can. I don't want my partner to do that. So I'll promise them monogamy and then defect. I'll cheat. I'll say, I would never. And then I do. And then I hope that they're fooled enough to not do the same. That's what cheating is.
And sometimes I found that people, it's not that they've said what they didn't want, right? They'll say like I don't want a relationship, but they don't say they'll say like I'm not ready for a relationship, but they don't give a time frame or things like that. And the other party waits around and it feels like they're cheating, or it feels like why aren't they choosing me when I see them in certain spaces? But I constantly have to have like reality conversations with people because I think people tend to get into this fantasy world because of how it feels, or like, how the person may be showing up, because people can be kind and still not want to be in a relationship. And I think sometimes people will look at it like mixed messages, but then when I do some like reality thought thinking with them, it's not, they've never done anything wrong. It's just that they've been going off of their feelings. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, when you really like somebody, it's like I like you so much. How could you not like me that much? The
Yeah, I
idea that it's
know.
asymmetrical, it just feels like no, you must feel this too.
Yeah.
it's actually, honestly, that's actually rarely true. Almost always somebody likes the other person. Well, what are the chances you both like each other? A 9. Pretty low, right? Far more likely one person's a 9 and one person's a 4. That's just
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
And so people presume, or they go like, I'm a catch. And if they just give me another chance, they'll see and they'll understand. They're just not seeing. But it's like, maybe. But
And I want you to know that regardless of what somebody wants from you, it doesn't change your value. And I think we equate, if Jeff is like, nah, like he's not giving me the same energy I'm giving him. I feel like sometimes like I would take it as if like, oh, that means something's wrong with me. But it doesn't mean something's wrong with you just because the party is not interested or don't want to pursue further. Right? Like, do you
yeah, I
think
mean,
that's fair?
people, the evaluation is too complicated, right? For example, if I ask you what's your favorite food, everyone could list some tops. If I say
Yeah.
what's the best food, I wouldn't even really know how to begin.
Right.
What's the best food on earth, right? What do we even mean? The truth is, there's a bunch of foods that you like, and then
Yeah.
some of your favorite foods is other people find disgusting. I don't like
Right.
eggs like, at all. Like, I don't like an omelet. I don't like scrambled eggs. Not just I don't like them. I find it disgusting. I mean, a 0. I
What
would
about
rather
boiled eggs?
hideous, a horrible thing that I would never eat.
Poached is good.
Whatever you list, I'm disgusted by.
Oh,
I'm telling
okay.
you right. I would rather eat a spider. I'm telling you, eggs are revolting to me. I will eat a tarantula before I eat a sunny side up egg. I'm telling
Damn.
you. And I'm
Okay.
an adventurous eater, but I don't like eggs. But the point is, most people love eggs. So am I right
Yeah.
or are y'all right? Well,
Right, right.
for me, it does. My favorite meal is just not going to involve eggs. Like, it's just not. So even if you go, but I'm beautiful, I'm talented, I'm smart. Maybe they don't like eggs. Maybe you're the best omelet in the world and they don't like eggs. So you got to let go of that idea that it's hierarchical. I do love tuna, Carla. But some people do not like tuna. I She says, "What about tuna?" I love tuna, but I know somebody who won't eat any seafood at all. They just go, "I don't eat it if it's seafood." That doesn't even make sense. Like, okay, so I don't eat land food. Doesn't that sound stupid? It doesn't even track. Like, you can't
Right.
not. Seafood's not all one thing to not like it all. She don't like freshwater, saltwater, shellfish, clam. You know what I mean? Like, it makes no sense. But you know what? You get to do that. Some people
Yeah.
love crab legs. She's revolted.
Yep.
You get to do
Yep.
that. So the point is letting go of that hierarchical thing where you think that there's some hierarchy,
Yeah.
right? Because there's somebody. This is even, if I can honestly say, and this is actually numerically back upable. If you're a woman and you're
Mhm.
looking for a man, there's almost certainly a man that loves, uh, uh, like, where you are like his type.
Mhm.
You get what I mean? A
Yeah.
common would be like skinny women, bigger
Mhm.
women, voluptuous, all
Mhm.
these various things. There are men who primarily love that
Mhm.
thing. They love it.
Mhm.
That's very true. So there's no like ideal body type in that way.
Right. Right.
There's ideal body type for health and stuff, but I'm saying in terms of attractiveness,
Yep.
all you got to do is go on the internet, take off safe search, and then Google whatever feature it is, XXX, and 100 pages will come up
Yeah,
of
yeah,
people
yeah.
who watch that thing. So that's evidence. I'm just using that as evidence. People love whatever it is about you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Just so people don't base your value off of a breakup or a situationship that doesn't go further. And I unfortunately see that happening a lot. What is the moral of the story today? We've had like three different kind of like questions, and um, I would love to hear you wrap it up.
This is the hardest thing that you ask me every time, Celeste. So the first one was about the person seeking. They have long simmering abuse that's recently come to the surface, and how do they deal with that? The
Yeah.
second one was about anticipating. Oh, I do know the third line. The second person was anticipating how they will be perceived when they want separate bedrooms from their man
Yeah.
and future husband. And the third one was this last one about going to a party and somebody got a
Hmm.
their girlfriend, but they pursued them. The through line is not to try to get into other people's minds. You got to do what you do. So in other words, in the abuse one, they said, well, if my parent had done this, or if this had happened, would I not be in this situation? You're trying to think about some alternate you, but there's no reason. You're the current you,
Yeah.
and just worry about that. In the
Yeah.
trying to get into the mind of your future husband, are they going to be mad at me when I want my own separate bedroom? You don't have to wonder about that. You meet the person and you tell them. If they don't like it, they're not your future husband.
Yeah.
And for this third one, uh, who knows what this person was thinking? You're welcome to ask them. You might not get an honest answer, but if they showed up to a birthday party with their girlfriend and you want to say, hey, what's up with that? They could say, I'm in an open relationship. They could say, I would leave her for you. They could say, look, just because a man can't have his favorite meal don't mean he got to starve, baby. Now come over. You never know.
You forgot
Wait.
about Jonathan's question.
Oh, and I forgot Jonathan's. Oh, Jonathan's question. And why do wives take? And he's saying, why do wives do this? Right, Jonathan? We can't know the minds of women. We can't know them. We simply have to exist. We're all at the mercy of them and their icicle
I'm
feet.
so done today.
So, Jonathan, I do wish you luck, but I'm making all these jokes, but then I'm going to log off, and you're just going to be him. So, I would be careful.
Oh my god!
And y'all do have 9 kids, so it's going to be a tough one.
Jeff, tell people how they can reach you if they want to work with you. We I love doing this monthly with Jeff because of how he's able to conceptualize something and make it relatable. And you really care. Like when you talk, you could tell you really care. But if people wanted to work with you or learn more about you, tell people where they can find you.
You can hit the submission, contact me button on rogersleads.com. That's all you got to do. Hit me up and we'll talk. Okay.
Thank you all so much. We